welcome to another episode of Lexitecture, a podcast about words by word nerds and for you. My name is Ryan, and in each episode, my friend Amy and I will be talking about our two favorite words of the week, looking at their origins and history, and generally chatting about how they got to where they are today. If that sounds like your cup of tea, come along for the ride and let's explore the weird and wonderful world of the English language. Today's episode, pirate humor. Right.
Okay, let's do words.
Let's do some words. You go first this time.
Okie doke. So, I am going to, today, talk about the word pirate.
Oh, awesome.
Pirate. And, well, one of the interesting things about this word, I think, is that its cultural context is really fucked up. If you think about it,
yeah,
in any kind of real life way, because I say pirate, you say awesome.
Yeah,
I
it's
say
true.
to someone off the coast of Eritrea, pirate, and awesome is very, very far from their response.
Yeah,
and I find it quite interesting that pirates still exist. Pirates still exist in the sense that people are still killed for their possessions and their vessels on the seas. And yeah, but it interests me a great deal as to how exactly bloodthirsty murdering thieves became a sort of a
Disney
kid's
attraction
character thing. Yeah. And so there is that kind of sense of, oh, pirates, oh, bless them, with their killing and raping and stealing, oh, what are they like? And yeah, so I find that quite funny. And these days, for the most part, when you say to someone pirate, they have that sort of, hey, pirates are awesome kind of thing going on. Partly because of Johnny Depp,
Yeah.
And Disney's machinations, which eventually led us to Pirates of the Caribbean 18. Who the fuck cares?
Yeah, exactly.
But apart from that, I thought that I was interested to see where this word came from. And then I mentioned to my husband that I was going to be talking about the word pirate, and he pointed something out that I felt I had to add into what we were saying today. And since we're dealing with etymology, he said to me, you must make sure to ask Ryan, why are pirates called pirates? They just are.
Thank you, Ross.
Because
that's fantastic.
Because I knew it was the kind of terrible joke that we would both appreciate, and screw anybody who doesn't like the pirate R joke.
Absolutely, no. That's true.
That was given, because of its etymological context, that was given rather than which country do pirates come from? Argentina.
Argentina, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, which,
Awesome.
So, the OED defines pirate, noun, as a person who attacks and robs ships at sea. The
Right.
secondary meaning given, a person who appropriates or reproduces the work of another for profit without permission, usually in contravention of patent or copyright. And in that sense, it's used as a modifier, as in pirate recordings. And a person or organisation that broadcasts radio or television programmes without official authorisation. There is, of course, the verb to pirate, to rob or to plunder a ship, or to use or reproduce another's work, etc., etc. So, the pirate, it's not a word that you generally have to explain the definition. People know what pirates are.
Yeah.
And there are, of course, all sorts, the culture, the history, the stories, the cool names, the various things that sort of are all part of pirate lore, if you like. I don't want to talk too much about those things, because it's not a pirate podcast. They definitely exist, don't they? There are pirate podcasts out there.
Oh, I'm positive. There
must be. So, Etym Online defines pirate, noun. The word dates from about 1300 and mid-13th century as a surname, which I found quite interesting. I've never met a Mr. or Mrs. Pirate, but that would be a cool name to have. So, Etym Online has this to say, from Latin, pirata, sailor, corsair or sea robber, which is also the source of the Spanish and the Italian pirata, Dutch pirat, German pirate. From Greek, pirates, And this is where things get interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So pirates is defined as brigand or pirate. It is literally one who attacks, with the implication being that what they're attacking is the ship. However, the word pirates comes from the Greek word peiran, anglicised P-E-I-R-A-N, which is defined here as to attack, comma, make a hostile attempt on, comma, try.
Oh.
From peira, P-E-I-R-A, trial, an attempt or an attack. And this I found very interesting indeed. Because to try and to attack, those things are not the same.
No.
And yet, however, this is the etymology of this word that has such clear meanings for us, either in the sense of the historical Blackbeard dudes and dudettes, of course. Not that dude is a gendered word. I've had this discussion many times before. Dude doesn't refer to either male or female. But, you know, we have this clear sense, but the word itself is derived from a clear Princess Bride case of, I do not think it means what you think it means.
Yeah. Always appreciate a Princess Bride reference.
I was curious about the notion that pirates are just people who try really hard with swords. and these days guns I suppose.
And such, yeah.
And then, of course, Etymonline, one of the great things about the site is it gives you way more information than you would ever need, really. And I was very excited, as I always am when I look up a word, to discover that there is a pi root associated with the word pirate.
Oh, excellent. And
the pi root, pi, just in case you haven't heard us musing about this before, pi stands for Proto-Indo-European, which is a sort of a reverse-engineered proto-language that is believed to be the original language from which all Proto-European languages ultimately derived.
Yes, and also pi root sounds delightfully close to pirate, so that's good too.
Pi root does sound delightfully close to pirate. I hadn't thought of that. Good stuff. So the pi root given is PER. And we have in the definition for PER, Proto-Indo-European root forming prepositions, etc., meaning forward and by extension in front of, before, first, chief, toward, near, against, etc. Now, the list of words derived from per, there's lots of them. And this is almost like a little, hey Roger, what do you say, in reverse.
Right. Because
the same Proto-Indo-European root that led us to pirate, which I'm trying to find in the list, and because my alphabetical order sucks, I am struggling to do that a little bit. Where is I? I actually can't find it in the list, but anyway, it's there.
Yeah.
We have, it forms all or part of. Afford is the first word in the list, alphabetical as it is. The last word in the list is veneer.
That's so weird.
So yeah, we have some really interesting sense. So this is the first sense of the root per. This is why I can't find pirate. The second sense, the word means to lead or to pass over. This is associated with the per preposition meaning, forward, through, in front of, etc. And per in its second meaning forms all or part of words like emporium, fjord, portable, and welfare. Oh. Again, mind blown. I love Proto-Indo-European roots. The third sense of per, there are 5 listed altogether on Etymonline. Okay. The third sense is where we find pirate. And the meaning given here is to try or risk, which again, they don't quite mean the same thing.
No, and neither of them means attack.
Yeah, as I was about to say, they're closer than try and attack, but they're not quite the same. So interesting. It forms all or part of, empirical, experience, experiment, expert, fear, parlous, peril, perilous, and pirate. Goes on to say, it is the hypothetical source of or evidence for its existence is provided by Latin ex perire, to try, periculum, trial, danger or risk, Greek peria, trial, attempt, experience. Now that's back to peria that led us to pirate more directly.
Right.
Empeiros, experienced. Old English, who knows how to pronounce, sorry, not Old English, Old Irish. I don't know how to pronounce modern Irish, so the word is A-I-R-E, vigilance. Okay. Old English, fair, calamity, sudden danger, peril or sudden attack. German, Gefahr, danger, and Gothic, Ferja, watcher. And I was really interested in this notion that trying is so dangerous.
Yeah.
In all of these other languages, coming from the same place, there is the sense that to attempt something is to risk something. You know, obviously these senses are a little closer than my modern brain assumed that they were. And that, of course, led me to think about the history of trying things. And, you know, I'm a teacher. I've been a teacher in various different contexts. And if nobody tries anything, nobody learns anything.
Yeah.
So I'm the sort of person who loves a motivational slogan about trying and failing and trying again as a result of the failure and trying something different until you find that magic try that suddenly brings you to success. So it's interesting for me to consider how much, as a teacher, I ask people to risk themselves. However, that still doesn't take us to the sense of attack. That one, I'm really quite puzzled about. Really quite bemused to find that to try, in its risky sense, became not just something that was a little bit dangerous, became something that was actively aggressive. So, there was something else I was going to say and I've forgotten what it was, and so I'm scuttling to the OED because, well, it's always a good thing to do.
That leap from risk, from trial and risk to like sort of transferring the risk involved in trying something outward. Like if you try something, mainly the only risk is associated with you might fail, whereas if you're attacking, maybe there's like the peril goes the other way. I don't know. That's a bizarre turn.
Yeah. And what I also found quite interesting is, you know, you can start to think about, well, you know, the sense of risk depends on what you're trying. If you're trying to take over a ship full of armed men, then there's a considerable risk involved. Pirates do indeed try really hard, because trying in that situation and failing, it's not a good way to pass your genes on.
No.
The other thing that I was going to say about pirate, so having gotten interested in this Greek root, pairan or pairatis, to attempt to attack or assault, I started to look at other words that were derived from this root and came up with this very, very interesting word. I was interested in it firstly because I'd never heard it before, and secondly because it has such a very specific meaning. And the word is anapeiratic. A-N-A-P-E-I-R-A-T-I-C. So it sounds vaguely piratical, anapeiratic or anapeiratic.
Yeah.
And what it means, it's an adjective. And it's got a very specific medical use.
Okay.
And essentially, it is a paralysis resulting from the habitual use of certain muscles for a long time, such as writer's paralysis. And the notion that the same pair could spawn so many hugely different words, and then within that set, that the Greek piratus or pairan could then lead to two such vastly different words. Becoming tired or paralysed because you have over-exercised a part of your body, versus skull and crossbones, Jolly Roger, sometimes cartoonish children's character, other times deadly thief, plunderer. It's it made me remember that words are pretty amazing things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about, how do I say this in a very fancy and clever way? Actually, no, I just isn't that cool? I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah, that's very neat.
And so pirate, which I thought would be pretty clear in terms of its etymology, turned out to be a bit more interesting than I was thinking. And the notion of how try came to mean attack isn't one that I've been able to pin down terribly well, but yeah, it's a cool one.
Yeah,
so,
that's very
pirate.
neat. I like that. Very cool. Yeah, this is one of those words where you said it, and I mean, I'll totally own that part of my "hey, awesome" was just because
Pirates
when you
are
don't
cool.
have to actually deal with them, and when
Yeah.
they are a thing centuries old, as opposed to the people that make life miserable for you right now, pirates are awesome. But also, it was one of those words where it's like, as soon as you said it, I was like, yeah, I have no idea
Where this
what to
comes
make
from.
like what to make it guess at with the construction of
Yeah,
this word.
sure.
It doesn't make any sense. Very cool.
But yeah, I absolutely love the notion that linguistically, pirates are people who try.
Just really hard and with weapons.
Yeah, the little pirate who could.
Those lovable scamps.
That's it. I like to propose in the own private seascapes of my head that's where it came, that somewhere linguistically someone admired those pirates for just, that never quit spirit. They were just so persistent. They were so good at stealing things and killing people. And even when they weren't good at it, they would always give it another go.
Yeah, it's the industriousness.
Yeah. Role models. That's what they are, really.
They're like Amish, but not.
Amish rarely shoot people, in fairness.
Yeah, an Amish pirate would be pretty useless.
Whoa.
But really conflicted about being useless. It would be really sad.
This is the best character idea I've heard in a long time.
Yeah.
Amish pirate. I feel like Amish pirate's a cartoon strip waiting to happen.
Yeah.
You heard it here first.
Abraham the Amish pirate.
And of course, he wouldn't be jolly, would he? They're not really known
it'd
for
be
the
miserable,
levity, the
'cause
Amish.
You'd really want to be getting stuff done efficiently and quickly and with teamwork, but the only things that he would be getting done would be violent and abhorrent.
Yeah. That is a tricky one, right enough.
Yeah.
At least he would be able to, he'd be able to include the famous Amish work ethic and just try again.
Yeah. And as long as it's either Steve Buscemi or, oddly enough in my head, John Cusack playing the Amish pirate.
You want John Cusack to play everybody, though, let's face
I
it.
do want John Cusack to play in everything. That's true. I can't
See,
wait to see the John Cusack Hamlet.
In terms of pirate actors, I always come back to Steve the Pirate in Dodgeball. I've completely forgotten what that guy's name is. It was literally in my head when I started talking, and now it's gone.
Yeah,
but I think it's a film with a lot of favourites in it. But one of the greatest moments is after Vince Vaughn's character has kind of lost his rag with Steve the Pirate and said, "You're not a pirate, grow up," kind of thing. And then he appears in his sort of mufti clothes, but when confronted with the chest full of money, he still goes, "Arr." It's like, you may take my clothes, but you will never take my piracy.
Yeah. It's Alan.
Alan Tudyk, that's what his name is. Thank you, yes.
It's like, I can see him in all the things that I've seen him in. I'm glad we could team up and get the whole name.
Yeah, I've had a lot of those things recently. Those, why can't I remember this? I should know this. And I'm very stubborn about not just Googling them.
Yeah.
Sometimes, you just have to give in for your own sanity and turn to the internet. But I quite like the notion that sometimes I actually know things without having to Google them. Just, now and again.
It just takes a while to access.
So, yeah, I like to kind of practice that on the odd occasion so that I don't completely atrophy and then find myself reliant on a piece of technology that, frankly, sometimes seems to be taking the piss out of me.
It's very true. Right.
So,
Um,
yes, pirate.
Very cool. My word this time around is humor.
Pirate humour.
Pirate
Love
humor. It works pretty well. So, linguistic trigger warning. This description is going to contain the world's least favorite word. I don't have words that like trigger me into actual physical conniptions, but I know a lot of people do. But so, just so you know, it's coming for you.
Okay, I'm really curious as to what this word is.
Yeah. So, humor, I didn't actually bother looking up the definition of it on dictionary because I feel like now it's fairly straightforward. Just funny things, comedy. If someone has a sense of humor, someone who knows like what people are going to find funny and how to kind of tap into that in various situations, right? So that's a pretty well conceived and common word. Where it stems from, it's sort of the first OED definition is related to the kind of ancient and medieval physiology and medical
That was what I thought of, not what I thought of first. I'm not that pretentious, but when you announced humour, I thought, oh, are we going to hear about the 4 humours? Interesting.
Yes. Yeah.
Are there 4?
There are 4, yeah. So it's
Okay.
The 4. So the idea for those who are unfamiliar, who sort of know it but can't quite remember, the concept in ancient and medieval physiology and medicine was that everybody is made up of 4 bodily fluids, basically 4 fluids in the body, and between those 4, depending on the proportion, their relative proportion to each other, that will determine your kind of mood or temperance or temperament or just state of health. So the 4 humors were blood, phlegm, choler, and melancholy or black bile. And so if all medical things, similar to the idea of the 4 elements, being in different proportions.
Earth, fire, water, air. Yes.
Yeah. So these 4 fluids determine the makeup of a person, the temperament of a person. And it stems, the word humor being connected to these things comes back through the Old French. And in Old French, so you think humour as the French word for humor. And the Old French word, sort of 12th century, 1100s, it originally just meant any fluid. So any liquid or fluid. And then over the course of the 12th century, it became more and more closely tied to bodily fluids of pretty much any kind. And then
everybody knows they're the best fluids.
Yeah. And then in the 13th century, it was sort of had calcified into being specifically the 4 bodily humors, the 4 humors. And where it comes from before the French is from Latin, which makes sense. And it was either Humor or Umor, because nobody knows whether the H was actually pronounced in Latin and whether that's a late addition or whatever. But it meant, it was used to talk about fluid or bodily discharge or any kind of moisture, or which is where we get the word humid, and humidity is related to humor, because the moisture in the air. And it's from the verb humere, U-M-E-R-E, the verb meaning to be moist, which brings in a lot of people's least favorite word.
Moist is the word that everybody hates. That's very interesting, Ryan, because I wondered, might it be moist? And indeed it was. However, what you said something a moment ago that reminded me of a story that always amuses me a great deal, of a woman who I know who has, I think the phrase wicked sense of humour might well have been invented for her. She's pretty wonderful. She was once at an Anne Summers party. Do you have Anne Summers in Canada?
We may, Anne but Summers, I'm not familiar.
Anne Summers is kind of it's like socially acceptable sex shops, for want of a better word. So you will find Anne Summers shops on some high streets, and usually what they have in the window is like lingerie and things like that. But if you go into an Anne Summers shop, they do indeed sell lingerie, but it's not intended to support bosoms and provide coverage and comfort. Right. And they also sell sex toys and costumes and various paraphernalia. And before they were kind of a storefront concern, their business model largely concerned of parties, like Tupperware parties.
Right.
Except instead of selling useful plastic goods, they sell useful plastic goods.
Right.
So Anne Summers parties are they're one of these kind of vaguely horrendous, come on girls, it'll be a laugh sort of affairs.
Right.
I've never been to one, actually, probably because I would run a mile from such enforced jollity, nudge wink stuff.
Right.
But this particular woman, a mutual friend told me this story, and the Anne Summers hostess was, to get the party going and to sort of set the tone for the evening and point out that it wasn't super serious and we'll be a bit silly and a bit rude. Said, okay, we're going to play rude words. Who can think of the rudest word? Just say it when you think of it. So people sort of laid about the usual kind of rude words that you would sort of, just generic names for body parts and, that sort of thing. And this woman who I'm talking about, she said her word and the room was suddenly silent. And it's a word that you used just a moment ago. So while the usual sort of Fanny and Balls and Willie and that things of that ilk were flying around the room,
Right.
Joanne calmly and coolly announced, discharge. Yeah, and it's such a commonplace everyday word. However, if you want that word to be rude, my God, is it rude.
Oh, it definitely. That's fantastic.
So yeah, from discharge to humour to moist, yeah, there's going to be a lot of, well, people won't really have much to say, but there will be faces being made, won't there?
Yes, there's a lot of noises.
Yeah. Carry on.
So that's where sort of ultimately where the etymology comes from, is from that moist discharges. I thought this word interesting because it has narrowed so much, because in kind of the 14th and 15th centuries, especially in the 1500s, it had just a huge array of meanings.
Okay.
Most of them related to liquid in some way. So it would relate to like sap in trees and plants, or water vapor and humidity in the air, or a spring, like an underground spring. So the water coming from a spring would be a humor. For a bit in the early 1600s, it was used to talk about, quoting the OED, the particular constitution or quality, i.e. saltiness, of a material substance. So it would talk about how the sea would implant its humor, or its salty humor, onto the sand, for instance.
Okay.
That was just a little nugget that I found interesting.
That is interesting, because that kind of, it seems to be coming a little bit closer to the sense of character.
Yeah, and it keeps getting closer to it. So in the 1500s is when the transition kind of starts happening. So it's still related to the concept of the four humors. It would mean, it could mean like a temporary state of mind or a particular feeling. So a person is in good humor or bad humor.
Yeah, sure.
It also meant a particular, like an inclination or a disposition, a whim, something that didn't, a desire that wasn't connected to a practicality. So it wouldn't be, the desire for food wouldn't be a humor, a state of humor, because it was a necessity. Of course you want food, you have to have food to eat. If you wanted a particular food for no reason, or you just had a flight of fancy to go do a thing, that was as a result of a particular humor.
Today, Patricia, I fancy seeing a monkey dancing,
Exactly.
wearing a green hat.
What an odd humor.
Yes.
Also in the 1500s, it could also mean, so at the same time as being able to mean a one-off state of mind, or a fanciful desire or wish, it could also refer to someone's character or general usual disposition.
Okay.
So John's humor is one of a jerk, or whatever.
Isn't it odd that those two definitions, which seem so wildly different could be covered by the same word at the same time.
Yeah, they're opposite. It's either your permanent disposition or your temporary disposition. It's the same
Yeah.
word. And it wasn't actually until the mid to late 1600s that it started transitioning into the more modern sense of being related more specifically to things like comedy or amusement or frivolity. So a humorous situation would be the late 17th century, that it would be a comedic moment, would be something humorous. And that's the same time, unsurprisingly, that the term sense of humor came about, because someone who had an idea of what was funny at any given moment or something like that. I prefer the idea of a sense of humor being someone with a good sense of humor is someone who can just read the room in general.
Yeah, I like that.
If you have a good sense of humor, you know when not to make jokes because you have a sense of the humor more broadly of the people around and how to kind of take that and not mold it and shape it, but work with it.
I think too there's very much implied with the notion of someone having a sense of humour in that they're able to discern whether or not a joke is intended to be hurtful or not.
Yeah, and no, exactly, and the how to interpret things coming in as well. Yeah. So I just thought so that's kind of humor, and then from the 1600s, it sort of has stayed more or less the same, and kind of all the other definitions and uses have sort of dropped off. You still kind of hear people good humor sometimes, but it's more antiquated now, and none of the other things really exist anymore. But so that's humor.
Cool. The only existing sense, and whether or not it's an existing sense, I'm just about to look up. The only existing usage of humour that I can think of that's still referring to a liquid is aqueous humour, which is the name given to the fluid inside the eyeball.
Yes. Yeah.
I believe, but as I say, I'm going to look that up just to...
I have in my head that
clarify.
vitreous humour is a thing as well. A similar kind of medical...
Yeah, what might vitreous humour
thing? But it would make sense that that sort of sense would live on in kind of medicine and anatomical
where
and
let's
medical
face it,
senses.
there are a lot of fluids. It makes sense that the doctors might want to, differentiate between that fluid, the sticky one, the clear one, and the really foul smelling one.
Yeah.
But aqueous. Yes, aqueous humour, the clear fluid filling the space in the front of the eyeball between the lens and the cornea. Oh, now it says here compare with vitreous humour, which I shall, because I can.
Google has that defined. Google has that defined as the transparent jelly-like tissue filling the eyeball behind the lens.
So I was in fact incorrect. The stuff inside is the vitreous humour, and the stuff between the lens at the front is the aqueous humour.
Right. Okay.
Well, there we are. Lovely humour. I quite like, I like occasionally to be stubbornly hipster in my definitions of words. So these days, when I hear people talking about a sense of humour, there will be a part of my brain that thinks, there's a man who knows his fluids.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, GSOH. It is quite fitting that that's something that you should write on a dating profile in either meaning.
Yeah.
Someone who is able to read the room, someone who knows his fluids.
Knows the
or
fluids.
Indeed her fluids. All about the fluids. That's very cool.
I thought that was interesting.
I like it a lot. There's lots of sometimes quite spurious scientific research about how water is able to take on character, take on emotions.
Right, yeah.
There's a Japanese guy, I forget what his name is, who did these sort of pseudo-scientific experiments about how water crystals change according to the emotional state of the samples. So to take from that the idea that our central character is in fact all fluid related, I quite like that. It's nice.
It's kind of neat.
Okay, hey Roger.
Yes.
More agonising pauses while I look up words using an indexing system that I think I learned how to do alphabetical order when I was about 5. Maybe I was just having a bad day that day. It's just never really made a great deal of sense to me.
Never really stuck.
No, it never really did.
And humor, I couldn't find humor in my issue of
In Smith, oh, that's a shame.
Synonyms discriminated. I was really looking forward to seeing what he would have come up with.
That
nope.
Sounds like it would have been interesting. Okay. So, Roger lists humour. We have, exciting, we have temperament, tendency, and then, hooray, fluid.
Nice. Wow.
Whim, so that sense of something that doesn't have a practical use. Minister to, as in I'll humour you. Be lenient.
Right.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that either. Permit. And then affections, laughter, amuse, wit, and flatter. Oh, flatter takes quite a that's quite a detour away from humour. I don't know, is it really? But I like the fact that both fluid and whim are in there.
Yeah, that's cool. Like they're both.
I've taken a humour to go rowing this afternoon. Yeah, never in my life have I taken such a humour. And pirate.
I'm curious to see what Roger has for pirate.
Oh, interesting indeed. So we have imitator, as in pirate video, copy, mariner, which is very respectable and without any sort of criminal connotation.
No, yeah, that's...
Then, militarist.
Interesting.
I wouldn't have thought the military had much time for pirates. We then have borrow, appropriate, robber, thief, and, surely one of the greatest words in the English language.
Oh.
Not used nearly enough for my liking. Knave.
Oh, right, that's good.
Knave with a kn.
Oh, the knave.
Yeah, and then after that comes piratical, which is glossed as thieving. Yeah.
And mariner is interesting. The mariner and militarist.
Very much so.
Mariner strips it of all the sort of violence and aggression. Militarist seems to strip it of its kind of
different
anarchic, independent quality, like the idea that a pirate is... I mean, of course, you assume that a pirate's not sailing under a letter mark from the English crown to blow up Spanish ships without causing an international incident, of course. But
I feel like there have been mariners who wouldn't be very pleased to be synonymized with pirates.
It's true. Yeah, that's casting a wide net. Yeah. You're making enemies, Roger.
A mariner in the OED is defined simply as a sailor.
Yeah. Which I guess is,
Yeah.
Sure.
It's not technically untrue.
No.
Pirates generally did sail. However, it leaves out rather an important part of the definition.
It seems to miss. Yeah. It misses a pretty important characteristic.
And that's it for this episode of Lexitecture. Thanks for listening, and if you enjoyed what you heard, please give us a rating and review on iTunes, and be sure to tell all your word nerd friends about us too. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter by searching Lexitecture, Lexitecture. And if you'd like to get in touch with us about the things we talked about this episode, you can send us an email at words@lexitecture.com. Special thanks to the Joy Drops for our theme music, and we'll talk to you again next week.